Have you ever found yourself in this incredibly specific, almost like cinematic situation?
Oh, I think I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. It's the end of a really long day. Maybe it's a Tuesday, one of those just aggressively mundane work days.
The worst kind.
Yeah, exactly. Where you've been, running from meeting to meeting, answering endless threads of emails, and just kind of navigating the subtle social dynamics of your workplace or maybe even your household.
It takes a lot out of you.
It totally does. So you finally get home, the house is quiet, and you walk into the bathroom to, I don't know, wash your hands.
Just a normal evening routine.
Right. And you glance up at that bright fluorescent lit mirror, and for a fraction of a second, your brain experiences a genuine glitch.
Because the face staring back doesn't look like your face.
Exactly. It looks severe. The jaw is set, the eyes look hardened, the brow is heavy. You look, frankly, a little frightening.
Yeah, and your immediate internal reaction is usually a huge spike of alarm.
Totally. You think, good grief, am I furious right now? Like, what is wrong with me?
But then you do a quick internal audit.
Right. And you realize you aren't furious at all. You were literally just thinking about what to make for dinner.
It's just totally at baseline.
Exactly at baseline.
hmm
Yet the reflection in the mirror looks like someone who is preparing to walk into a gladiator arena.
That dissonance between your internal calm and that external severity is such a universally jarring experience. But it's rarely actually examined for what it is.
Which is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Yes, because when we catch that reflection, our brain's threat detection system just instantly kicks in.
Like an evolutionary response.
Precisely. We are evolutionarily wired to read facial expressions for danger, right?
Right.
And we end up applying that exact same harsh metric to our own reflection.
So we immediately pathologize it.
We do. We assume that a stern resting face means there's some, suppressed negative emotion or creeping bitterness or just a failure to maintain a positive disposition.
A failure to just be happy, basically.
Exactly. But if we actually look at the underlying physiology and psychology of that moment, it's none of those things.
Wait, really? It's not just hidden anger.
Not at all. That intense expression is not an indicator of present moment anger, and it is definitely not a sign of emotional weakness.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's basically a biological ledger. You are looking at a highly accurate topographical map of the cognitive load, the emotional regulation, and just the sheer psychological weight you have been managing all day long.
A biological ledger. I love that phrasing so much. And that reframing is the core mission of our discussion today. We want to really unpack the architecture of the scary resting face.
It's such a crucial topic.
It really is. So, taking the insights from our source material, we're going to explore the mechanics behind what actually happens when we drop that social mask.
Because the environment is finally safe.
Right. You're solitary. So we want to figure out why the facial muscles settle into such a remarkably heady configuration and why this phenomenon is particularly pronounced in people who, well, carry a heavy intellectual or empathetic workload.
And to do that, it requires us to completely dismantle the societal expectations surrounding how a person at rest is, quote unquote, supposed to look.
Right, because society has some pretty strict rules about that.
Oh, absolutely. The modern cultural baseline basically insists that a neutral state should look serene, approachable, and lightly pleasant all the time.
Which is exhausting just to think about.
Right, because from a neurological standpoint, that serenity is often an active, highly energy-consuming performance.
It's work.
It is literal work. When we strip away the cognitive resources required to maintain that performance, what remains isn't necessarily a smile. It is the visible architecture of raw endurance.
Wow. Raw endurance. So if you are listening to this right now and you've ever felt like a pang of guilt because a partner or friend or maybe a coworker looked at you while you were just simply existing and asked, "Are you mad?"
Or why are you glaring at me?
Yeah, that classic question. If you ever dealt with that, this discussion is going to fundamentally change your relationship with your own face.
We really want to move away from viewing this intense resting expression as a social liability.
Exactly. By the end of this deep dive, you might just see it as a profound badge of honor.
I think you definitely will.
Let's hope so. So let's start with the baseline physics of what happens when we are around other people. To understand the scowl in the bathroom mirror, we really have to quantify the invisible energy we expend the second we step out our front door.
We have to analyze the metabolic and the neurological cost of the social mask.
Let's unpack that.
Sure. So the source text brings up a foundational reality that we rarely actually quantify. Maintaining a pleasant, approachable demeanor is not a passive state.
it feels passive because we do it so automatically.
Right. But physiologically, it is a highly demanding, energy-intensive activity. When you are interacting with the world, you are engaged in continuous, often subconscious emotional labor.
We usually think of emotional labor as like dealing with really difficult people or resolving huge conflicts,
Exactly, but it operates on a micro level constantly.
meaning just being a polite participant in society drains the battery.
Precisely. Let's look at the mechanics of it. Just to appear engaged and non-threatening, your brain is constantly firing signals to the zygomaticus
The
major.
smile muscle.
Yeah, exactly, to hold a slight, polite smile, and it's micro-adjusting the orbicularis oculi muscles around your eyes to convey warmth.
So you don't look completely dead inside.
Right, exactly. And it is managing your vocal cords to modulate your pitch so you don't sound too abrupt.
Oh, the customer service voice.
Yes, the classic customer service voice. Simultaneously, your central nervous system is scanning the room, reading the micro-expressions of the people around you, anticipating their needs.
And suppressing your own reactions, right?
Exactly. Suppressing any authentic reactions that might cause social friction. Your brain is running a highly complex background program just to ensure you are perceived as pleasant.
That makes me think about the physical toll of this. We usually describe feeling drained after a long day as just a purely mental state.
But it's physical.
It really is. You are describing a physical endurance event. It's a bit like holding a heavy box at shoulder height.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Thanks. Like
Mm.
when you first pick it up in the morning for a quick stand-up meeting, the box isn't that heavy. You smile, you nod, you engage.
But you don't get to put the box down.
Exactly. You have to hold it through the commute, through the attempt to get your inbox to zero, through the delicate phrasing of that email to a really difficult client.
It adds up fast.
It does. By the time you get home and you are finally entirely alone, your arms don't just gracefully lower to your sides, they collapse.
They absolutely collapse.
But if we are talking about facial muscles, how does that translate? Like, is it just a buildup of lactic acid in the cheeks, or is there a deeper nervous system connection at play here?
The muscular fatigue is definitely real, but the nervous system connection is the actual driver here.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So when you suppress an authentic emotion, say swallowing your frustration when a deadline is arbitrarily moved, your amygdala doesn't just power down.
The amygdala being the fear and stress center.
Yes. It continues to process that stress, sending electrical impulses through your facial nerves, which creates these microtensions.
So it's literally hardwired into the face.
It is intimately wired into your autonomic nervous system. The tension in your jaw or your brow isn't just localized muscle fatigue. It is the physical manifestation of your sympathetic nervous system being kept in a low-grade state of fight or flight all day.
Wow. So you're constantly overriding your baseline state to accommodate the environment.
Exactly.
So the face is essentially a dashboard indicator light. It's telling us that the central nervous system has been running hot, just actively suppressing our natural reactions to keep social equilibrium.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the longer that suppression lasts, the more severe the physiological rebound will be when the tension is finally released.
Which brings us back to the bathroom mirror.
Right. When you step into your bathroom and close the door, your brain registers the isolation. It signals to the body that the threat of social observation is totally gone.
The performance can finally end.
Yes. And the facial muscles don't just relax into a state of glowing peace.
At least a spa commercial.
Exactly. It's not a spa commercial. They drop into a profound, heavy rest that mirrors the sheer magnitude of the psychological effort you just expended.
The intense face is literally the aftermath.
It really is.
It is the physical debris left over from all those microtransactions of emotional labor. The source text actually has this concept of tiny everyday endurances, which captures it so perfectly.
It's a great phrase.
Right. We usually reserve the word endurance for running a marathon or surviving a massive crisis. But maintaining a gentle tone when you are exhausted is an endurance event.
Absolutely.
Writing warmly at the end of a borderline hostile email, that is an endurance event.
It takes so much restraint. And if your solitary face looks exhausted, stern, or even intimidating, the source material argues that this is direct proof of your effort.
So it's not a bad thing.
Not at all. It means you actually possess the capacity to navigate a complex social world with high levels of consideration and patience.
That's fascinating. So people who don't care don't get the face.
Essentially, yes. People who lack empathy or who simply do not care about social harmony, they don't experience this dramatic rebound because they haven't been doing the heavy lifting all day.
They haven't been holding the box.
Right, they haven't been holding the box. The people who experience the most jarring shift in their resting face are typically the most accommodating, hardworking individuals.
They've accumulated a massive deficit of relaxation. Okay, so if we accept that this heavy face is just the engine cooling down after a really long drive, it introduces a really frustrating contradiction.
Oh, the interpersonal friction.
Exactly. If this is a natural, harmless, and even honorable biological rebound, why does it generate so much social friction?
It's a huge problem.
We've all been on the receiving end of someone asking, "What's wrong?" when we are perfectly fine, and it just instantly ruins the mood. Why is there such a massive gap between what we are feeling internally and what others are perceiving externally?
Well, we really run into the limits of human perception here. We are dealing with the clash between an internal state of decompression and an external interpretation based on evolutionary heuristics.
Meaning, we judge books by their covers because we had to survive.
Exactly. We rely on rapid visual processing to gauge the emotional state of the people in our tribe. But the crucial error happens when an observer conflates relaxation with current mood.
Okay, wait, let's slow down and unpack that.
Sure. The source text introduces this fascinating philosophical shift. A deeply relaxed facial expression does not necessarily reflect your present tense emotional state.
Okay.
Rather, it reveals the accumulated fatigue of your past.
Wait, let's really dig into that. My face isn't reflecting how I feel in this exact second. It's acting as a historical ledger.
Exactly. It acts as a structural memory of your tension.
A structural memory. Wow.
Think of a tree growing on a windy coastline.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
If you visit that tree on a perfectly calm, sunny day, you will see that its trunk is violently bent and its branches are just twisted away from the ocean.
Right?
The wind isn't blowing right now, but the wood grew that way to survive years and years of coastal gales.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Human fascia and facial musculature operate similarly. The muscles have been literally trained and structured by your chronic stress and your prolonged concentration.
So when your partner or your coworker asks, "Are you mad?" they are making a fundamental error in time.
That's exactly it. They are looking at the weathering on the mountain and assuming there is a hurricane currently happening, when in fact the sky is completely clear.
They are misreading history as a present tense emergency. That is such a brilliant way to conceptualize it. But, this dynamic has real consequences.
Very real consequences.
If you're constantly surrounded by people who misread your historical ledger as a current storm, it creates a dangerous biofeedback loop.
The mirroring effect.
Right. If someone tells you 3 times a day, "You look miserable, you look angry, what's wrong with you?" the human brain is highly suggestible.
Extremely suggestible.
You might actually start to produce stress hormones simply because you are being treated as if you are stressed. You end up completely internalizing their misinterpretation.
Psychologists refer to this as the danger of emotional internalization, and the source text specifically warns against it.
Because we naturally mimic each other.
Right. Because humans are social creatures, we instinctively use others as mirrors to calibrate our own emotional state. If the social mirror continuously reflects back a terrifying, angry image, we begin to subconsciously adopt that internal posture.
It's closely related to the facial feedback hypothesis, right?
Exactly, the idea that our facial expressions can actually influence our emotional experience. If you are constantly having to defend your resting face, you generate genuine anxiety.
You literally become the angry person they thought you were.
Yes.
So what does this all mean for us? The strategy, then, isn't to change the face, but to change how we relate to the feedback.
Precisely. You have to establish an impermeable boundary between your internal reality and their external perception.
How do you even do that?
When someone says, "You look mad," the psychological strategy is to observe their comment without actually absorbing it. You have to mentally translate their feedback.
Translated how?
You tell yourself, "They are reacting to my structural memory. They are seeing the wind on the tree, not the weather today."
I really like that.
By doing that, you prevent their anxiety from hijacking your nervous system.
I hear that, but I have to challenge this premise just a little bit.
Go for it.
Internal boundaries are fantastic in theory. I can sit in my living room and internally validate my coastal tree analogy all day long.
Right. In isolation, it works.
But we operate in reality. We work in open plan offices, we manage teams, we raise children. If I just walk around with a severe scowl, fully resting in my historical tension, I'm going to alienate people.
You are.
My boss might think I'm completely disengaged or even hostile to feedback. My kids might find me unapproachable. Isn't this idea of just letting your face be heavy going to severely isolate us in a society that really requires cohesion?
That is the essential friction of this entire concept. We cannot entirely abandon social cohesion, nor can we expect everyone around us to just become experts in reading topographical facial history.
Right. Sorry, boss, you're just misreading my structural memory. That's not going to fly.
No, it won't. The source text does not advocate for walking through the world completely oblivious to the discomfort of others, but it does explicitly warn against the default solution.
Which is forcing another fake smile.
Exactly, because faking a smile to soothe their anxiety just restarts the entire endurance event.
You are picking the heavy box right back up.
And flooding your system with the exact tension you are desperately trying to release.
Okay, so if we can't ignore them, but we shouldn't fake a smile, what's the middle ground?
If you perform an emotion you don't feel just to regulate someone else's nervous system, you betray your own biological need for recovery. So the text offers a bridge between protecting your internal state and maintaining social harmony.
And what is that bridge?
The use of pre-planned verbal scripts. We are talking about cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, meaning using words to do the work that the facial muscles are just too tired to do.
Yes, exactly. Sustaining a physical facial posture requires continuous metabolic and neurological energy.
It burns fuel.
But speaking, a single rehearsed sentence requires almost none.
Okay, so give me an example. What does this script look like?
The strategy is to have short, non-defensive phrases ready to go. For example, if a colleague looks concerned, you simply say, "I'm actually doing fine, I'm just letting my guard down for a moment."
I'm just letting my guard down for a moment.
Or with family, you could say, "I'm perfectly happy, I'm just resting my face."
There is something incredibly disarming about that phrasing. It really removes the mystery.
It does, and it doesn't apologize either.
Right, and it doesn't try to gaslight the other person by saying, I'm smiling, see? When clearly you look intense. It just states the biological fact.
The psychological utility of the script is that it prevents the adrenaline spike that happens when you are caught off guard.
Because usually when someone abruptly asks, why are you glaring at me? The natural response is extreme defensiveness.
We stammer, we feel guilty.
Yeah, and we usually try to quickly contort our face into this manic, unconvincing smile to prove we aren't mad.
Which fools no one.
Exactly. Having a script acts as a verbal shield. It communicates your state with absolute clarity, reassuring the observer's amygdala that there is no threat.
While allowing your vagus nerve to remain in a state of rest.
It really reclaims your agency. You are no longer a hostage to their misinterpretation, but you also aren't leaving them out in the cold to just deal with your scowl.
It's the perfect compromise.
But I want to shift the focus a bit to the individuals who actually develop this specific type of facial architecture. Because the source material goes way beyond just the mechanics of the workday and dives into something far more, well, existential.
Yes, this is where the text gets really deep.
It makes a distinct claim about who specifically ends up with this heavy, stern expression over the course of a lifetime.
The text transitions from basic physiology to physiognomy, specifically looking at the physical markers of deep, earnest thought.
Okay, so what does that mean in plain English?
It posits that this heavy gravity in the face is intricately tied to how a person processes life's larger, more difficult questions.
So, the source suggests that people who are constantly grappling with the meaning of life, who interrogate their own identity, and who just don't shy away from complex inner conflicts, naturally develop a physical weight to their expression.
Exactly. We aren't just talking about the stress of answering emails anymore. We are talking about carrying existential weight.
It is the physical manifestation of chronic cognitive dissonance.
When you are wrestling with profound questions, morality, purpose, the gap between who you are and who you want to be, your brain is engaged in sustained high-level processing.
And that processing literally shapes the face.
It does. The source text contrasts this with individuals who process the world on a strictly superficial level.
So people who avoid the hard stuff.
Right. If someone habitually avoids self-reflection, actively ignores internal conflicts, and defaults to whatever is easiest or most highly validated by the crowd, they do not develop this specific structural weight.
Because they aren't working those specific emotional muscles.
Exactly. Their resting face might be perfectly smooth or perpetually blank, but it lacks that heavy, structured intensity.
So the severe resting phase, therefore, is a physical testament to a life lived earnestly. It maps the terrain of a mind that bravely confronts its own shadows.
It's a very poetic way to look at it.
That is a massive compliment to anyone listening who struggles with this.
Very.
It suggests that your intense face is proof that you are in the arena. You aren't living a shallow existence.
It's proof of depth.
But here's where it gets really interesting. I have to play devil's advocate here again.
Pigs do.
Are we sure we aren't just aggressively pathologizing basic human anatomy?
The genetics question.
Yeah. Some people genetically just have a heavier brow ridge. Some people have deep-set eyes or a jaw structure that naturally turns downward at the corners of the mouth. Are we conflating DNA with deep philosophical earnestness?
That is a very important distinction to make. It is crucial to distinguish between a genetic baseline and acquired tension-based facial structure.
Because we don't want to get into phrenology here.
Exactly. The text isn't suggesting that bone structure dictates depth of thought, which would absolutely veer into debunked historical pseudoscience.
Right.
What it is referring to is the neuromuscular patterning layered over the genetics.
Okay, break that down for me.
Regardless of your natural bone structure, the repeated chronic firing of the corrugator supercilii.
That's the muscle between the eyebrows, right?
Yes, the muscle that draws the brow down and inward during deep concentration or emotional distress. The repeated firing of that muscle leaves a lasting imprint on the fascia and the overlying skin.
Ah, okay.
It is the dynamic tension, the way the face holds itself in moments of stillness, that reveals the history of earnest processing. A person can have very soft genetic features but still possess a gaze and a resting muscular tone that feels undeniably heavy.
Okay, so assuming we're talking about this acquired existential tension, I still have a major concern with this.
What's the concern?
Well, if the reward for being a deep, earnest thinker is that my face slowly turns into a brooding gargoyle under the weight of the universe, that sounds miserable.
It does sound pretty bleak.
Is that the final destination? Are deep thinkers just doomed to look perpetually burdened as they age?
If the heavy face were the final destination, it would be a grim prognosis. But the source text offers a highly optimistic resolution to this.
Oh, thank goodness.
The heavy face is not the end of the road. It is a chrysalis.
A chrysalis, like a cocoon.
Yes, it is a necessary phase of the journey. The text actually uses the metaphor of moving through a tunnel.
Okay, walk me through the tunnel.
If you do not abandon the inner conflict, if you have the courage to carry those heavy, complicated feelings and walk completely through the dark tunnel of self-reflection, the physiology eventually follows the psychology.
Meaning a shift happens.
A profound shift occurs.
So what does that shift look like mechanically? How do we actually get out of the tunnel?
It comes down to the neuroplasticity of resolution. Over years of enduring this weight, your mind slowly begins to categorize and resolve its deepest conflicts.
You start figuring things out.
Right. You figure out what your core values actually are. You determine what you're willing to suffer for, and just as importantly, what you no longer care about at all.
And as that internal architecture settles into place.
The constant low-grade firing of those anxiety and questioning pathways simply stops. The psychological tension unspools.
And because the mind and the facial muscles are intrinsically linked, the once stern face organically softens.
It just lets go.
So it isn't something you have to force. You don't have to practice relaxing your face. It just happens because the engine that was generating the tension has finally been turned off.
You've set the heavy box down for good.
Because you realize you don't need to carry it anymore. And the text describes a really fascinating behavioral shift that accompanies this physiological softening. It talks about a state of effortless manifestation.
That phrase can sometimes sound a bit mystical, I know.
Yeah, a little woo-woo.
But the text frames it as a highly logical outcome of having done the internal work. It suggests that people who survive this prolonged period of earnest struggle reach a point where they no longer have to desperately chase outcomes.
Their decision-making becomes incredibly rapid.
They don't agonize over choices anymore.
Right, because they've already pre-calculated the decision trees. If you spend a decade wrestling with your core identity, by the time a career choice or a relationship dilemma pops up, you don't have to spend any energy figuring out what to do.
You already built the heuristic. The compass is fully calibrated.
That is so freeing.
Exactly. The cognitive load required to navigate daily life drops dramatically. You aren't burning metabolic energy trying to decipher who you are in every new situation.
And this leads directly to the next phase the text describes, which is shedding the unnecessary.
Yes. When that profound internal clarity hits, you experience a natural reallocation of energy.
You begin to drop things that make your heart heavy, and you do it without hesitation.
You drop the forced relationships that were draining you.
You abandon the restrictive mindsets or the career paths you were only pursuing for external validation.
And the crucial element here is the total lack of friction.
What do you mean by lack of friction?
Well, you don't have to white-knuckle your way out of these bad habits. You don't have to aggressively force people out of your life.
It just happens organically.
They naturally fall away because you have ceased to provide the energetic environment that sustained them.
Wow.
The gravity that was pulling your facial muscles into a scowl is suddenly redirected into a grounded, highly efficient forward momentum. You finally have energy to just be.
That is an incredibly hopeful trajectory. The severe resting phase is basically just the armor you wear while you are building your foundation.
It's exactly that.
But how do we actively nurture this? If I'm listening to this right now and I know I'm still in the middle of the tunnel carrying all that weight, how do I help my nervous system survive the process?
The source material provides a very specific behavioral prescription for this.
Okay, I'm taking notes. What is it?
It centers on how we utilize our moments of absolute solitude. It introduces the concept of expression responsibility,
Expression responsibility.
which is the radical idea that you must take ownership of your own facial autonomy.
Because right now, we don't.
No, in a society that relentlessly commodifies pleasantness, especially for women, for service workers, for anyone operating within a hierarchy, we are trained to believe that our faces exist primarily for the consumption and comfort of others.
We treat our own faces like public property. We feel obligated to keep the landscaping looking nice, even when we are the only ones home.
That is exactly the dynamic we have to break.
So how do we break it?
The source concludes with a very powerful imperative. Allowing your face to be stern, exhausted, or even scary when you are completely alone is not a failure of character.
It is not an act of selfishness or laziness.
It is an absolute biological necessity. It is an act of self-care, a rightful physiological reward for the immense labor you have performed throughout the day.
So respecting the autonomy of your face means giving your autonomic nervous system permission to fully reset.
Exactly. If you spend your evening alone on the couch, still subconsciously monitoring your expression,
Still trying to maintain a look of gentle serenity while, like, watching TV or doing the dishes.
right, if you do that, you are denying yourself a sanctuary. You are keeping the threat detection system online.
And by doing so, you maintain chronically elevated cortisol levels.
Yes. Psychologists who study biofeedback loops note that patients who simply observe their facial tension without trying to fix it or judge it experience a much faster return to a parasympathetic resting state.
Meaning the rest and digest state.
Yes. Accepting the tension actually signals safety to the brain. The brain says, we are allowed to look exactly as tired as we feel. The environment must finally be secure.
Which brings us to a specific, actionable challenge for everyone listening right now. We want you to implement this biological reset today.
Tonight, ideally.
Yes, tonight. When the obligations are finally met, when you are done being a productive employee, or a patient partner, or an engaged parent, give yourself a window of entirely unmonitored alone time.
Just 5 minutes is enough.
Exactly. Go into your bedroom or your bathroom, shut the door, and let the physical architecture of your face collapse.
Don't look at a screen to distract yourself.
Don't try to meditate or aggressively relax. Just let the sheer gravitational pull of the day's effort take over.
If your jaw sets, let it.
If your brow furrows heavily, welcome it. If you catch your reflection and you look like an exhausted warrior who just survived a siege, do not fight that image.
Because that severity is the structural memory of your endurance. It is the armor that allowed you to navigate the complexities of your day intact.
You must respect the armor, allow it to sit there, fully acknowledged, until the nervous system realizes it is safe enough to let it dissolve on its own timeline.
By accepting the physical reality of your accumulated fatigue, you stop generating the secondary tension that comes from fighting yourself.
Reclaiming your face is the first necessary step to reclaiming your internal peace.
It really is.
Let's trace the arc of what we've unpacked today, because we've covered a lot of ground. We started by quantifying the invisible, highly metabolic energy required to wear the social mask right.
And how the sudden release of that emotional labor creates the intense facial rebound we see in the mirror.
Then we examined the evolutionary perception gap, how the people around us misread the historical ledger of our attention as a present tense threat.
We discussed the biofeedback dangers of internalizing those misinterpretations.
and how employing those pre-planned verbal scripts like, I'm just letting my guard down, can protect our internal boundaries while maintaining social cohesion through cognitive offloading.
We then explore the deeper physiological markers of the earnest mind.
Yeah, how chronic cognitive dissonance and wrestling with existential weight literally reshapes our facial tension over time.
And most crucially, we looked at the light at the end of the tunnel.
We explored how enduring that internal conflict eventually leads to profound neuroplastic resolution, a natural softening of the facial structure, and the effortless ability to shed the relationships and habits that drain us.
It is a comprehensive framework for moving from a state of chronic endurance to a state of grounded clarity.
And it all begins with accurately interpreting the data your own body is giving you. Which brings us to a final, highly practical question drawn from the underlying philosophy of the source text, something for you to actively calculate as you move forward.
Think about the heaviest element in your life right now.
Think about the one obligation, the one relationship, or the one restrictive belief that is requiring the most emotional labor to maintain, but that you continue to carry purely out of habit.
If your relaxed face today is a topographical map of your past endurances,
What will your face look like a year from now if you choose to finally set that heavy box down today?
it is a question of structural destiny.
Exactly. What will the map look like when you stop weathering the storm? The next time you walk past a dark window or catch your reflection in the bathroom mirror and you see that intense, heavy expression staring back at you, don't let it startle you.
Take a breath, give that reflection a nod of respect.
It has been working incredibly hard to keep you safe. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of your own endurance. We will catch you next time.